Hello folks, I'm John Myrie and welcome to the Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. On this week's show we have tips and reports for you from Jarrett McCarthy down at Hayward Bait and Bottle. And then we talk bass fishing with pro bass tournament angler Matt Stefan. Lots to cover on this week's show, all coming up right after these messages.
Store your boat where it'll be safe and secure at Hayward Powersports. We're the area's largest marine and power sports storage facility. Call now to reserve your space and bring it in when you're done for the season. Your boat will be prepared by our certified techs who properly winterize today's high-tech motors. We offer shrink wrapping and indoor storage, plus a 20% discount in any repairs done when you store your boat with us. State licensed and bonded, Hayward Powersports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77 or at haywardpowersports.com.
The Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau in Sawyer County, Wisconsin welcomes you to our Northwoods hometown. No matter the season, no matter the activity, you'll always be surrounded by our great outdoors. What more could you ask for in a vacation destination? Woods, waters, world-class events. Contact us for information on lodging, dining, attractions, events, trail conditions, and more. Order your free vacation guide and start planning your getaway today. Visit us at haywardlakes.com or call 1-800-724-2992.
Riding along in my automobile.
Bumping into things unexpectedly? Make your first choice for collision repair. Ernie's Auto Body, featuring the most advanced collision repair facility in Northwest Wisconsin. With a state-of-the-art spray, bake down, draft paint booth for that better-than-new finish, laser technology for precision frame alignment, loaner cars available, computerized estimates, written guarantees, and documented unmatched customer service, the clear choice is Ernie's Auto Body, south of Hayward on Highway 63 and Nursery Road, where quality is no accident.
Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering welcomes you to stop by for their great lunch menu. And while you're there, Lynn's also has a great selection of custom-cut meats and sausages, as well as many varieties of snack sticks, jerky, fresh cheese curds, and much more. Lynn's is open Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5:30 and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering in Hayward.
Today, anglers fish longer. Today, anglers fish harder. Today, anglers rely more than ever on their electronics. It all comes down to catching more fish, and today, anglers rely on Amped Outdoors lithium batteries, period. Visit ampedoutdoors.com today to power your outdoor experience.
We're down at Hayward Bait and Bottle talking to Jarrett McCarthy down here, and Jarrett, it looks like we're finally starting to cool off. The lake's cooled off a bunch now, and it seems like we're set for the fall. But man, everything, we keep talking about this, but it's way behind.
Yeah, absolutely. We're finally getting some cold weather out there, and it seems like fall is finally here. But yeah, definitely warmer than we usually are. And whatever we're going to have for fall, or early winter, it's sure going to be in a really short span.
A lot of people up here this time of year are looking for muskies. What are you hearing from the muskie reports out there?
Now that the weather is finally starting to cool off, we're seeing a lot more fish, come to the surface. Quite a few bit more hit the nets. Anglers are still having tough days out there right now, but a lot of guys out there starting to drag some suckers, seeing some success, and a lot of guys are starting to slow down what they're casting out there. They're doing a lot more with some of the bigger plastics and a little bit less with those faster baits.
There for quite a while, it just seemed like they even wanted suckers, but now they're starting to go on the sucker some.
Yeah, now that the water's cooling down, those suckers will take that water a little bit easier. Those fish are slowing down too, so they don't quite want to chase a bait 50 feet all the way back to the boat. And, if they do and they get to the boat and they don't feel like committing, there's a big tasty sucker sitting right there for them.
There'll be a few guys trolling for them too.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we go further into this cold weather span, trolling becomes more prevalent, especially with just the angler itself. As it gets colder and you want to do less work with the reel, it's a lot easier to put it in a holster and cover water that way.
Let's talk about walleye fishing. That also has picked up pretty good, I hear.
Yeah, not that water's starting to cool down, those walleyes are starting to move up a little bit shallower, as they will be for early ice or what have you, and that's where everybody looks forward to catching them, just like in the spring. But yeah, live bait's still a great option, especially with a walleye sucker or northern sucker this time of year, and guys will start casting hard baits for them as well, having success.
Using jigs, rigs, slip bobbers, what you've been hearing the best?
Yeah, it just depends on what time of day you're out there. During the daytime hours, it's still best to run a slip bobber. Keep those baits away from the boat, but yeah, when you get into prime time, you can kind of sneak up on them a little bit. You can cast some jigs and what have you at them and be successful.
And, trolling works for them too, as they move a little bit deeper.
Yeah, as they move a little bit deeper, it's a great way to get out and find some fish, cover some water with the trolling.
And panfish. I know quite a few people, including you, go after crappies and panfish. I know I'd spend a lot of time for them, and that was kind of weird last week. I mean, it's like they're not all in the same places they should be for this time of year.
Yeah, and usually there's two places this time of year where you'll find those panfish. A lot of those crappies and gills will be out in the deep basins, those 20 to 35-foot basins. They'll be schooled up out there. Or B, look for whatever you've got left for green weeds, because that's going to attract all your minnows, all your bug life, and obviously it will include panfish as well. But yeah, we've had a lot of fish doing a lot of different things, but it's good for anglers out there, because then if you can't find them out, in your basins or what have you, you got another place to go look.
And I noticed they tend to be a little bit more scattered around. And one of the lakes I was on, I think, was trying to turn over. And I don't know where the lakes are at, but as we're speaking here, we're still at 58 to over 60-degree water temperature.
Yeah, so still definitely high, still waiting on that turnover to happen on most of these lakes. But with these nights that we've got coming up, getting down to the high 30s, 40s, it'll come sooner than later.
And let's talk a little bit about bass fishing. The bass fishing's pretty good out there in the fall, especially for the big smallmouth.
Yeah, absolutely. Those water temps start to go down, those smallies, they really put the feed bag on. And a lot of different ways that you can go out and, get after the smallies right now. But, just like walleyes and muskie, dragging a big sucker, you'd be surprised how big a bait a big smallie will take. But one of the most effective options this time of year is dragging a northern sucker for those big smallies.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Big fish, a big bait, big fish, and just seems to be more effective than the little bitty baits.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get onto those warmer days, those days that are, just a little bit more tough out there, you can downsize your baits as well.
Yeah, surprising. I was on a lake out east of here on Saturday, and it was still we were looking at, over there we had 55-degree water temperature. And we actually seen a smallmouth right next to the boat come up and bust something on top of the water.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just speaks to every different lake around here. No matter what body of water you show up on, it's going to be different. You cannot assume that every body of water is the same. There are going to be fish doing different things in every different lake out there.
And I know as far as the hunting, you guys are pretty much ready for everything when it comes to hunting seasons here in the shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you're looking to get new string cables on your crossbow down here or pick up a new crossbow itself, getting ready for the upcoming gun deer season, which is right around the corner. If you need to pick up a tag or what have you, stop on down and see us. We've got everything. We've got ammunition. We've got all the supplies that you need for a successful hunt this year.
And for the fall fishing, too.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a little bit of everything down here.
Jarrett, I know you get really involved in the fall this time of the year. Not only you're looking at probably starting to set up for the ice fishing season here in the shop, but you actually buying stuff already for next spring.
Yeah, so most of our buying for this coming season for spring and winter is done already. There's a handful of things that we'll do a little later on, like muskie or what have you. Obviously, you can't go through and buy everything you need for the next year in the heart of the season. But yeah, if anybody's out there that's listening, if you are looking for something or you'd like to see us get into carrying something a little bit more, stop by and chat with me, because, we're not deaf to people who are looking for a new product or want to see something new in the shop. So definitely stop on by. Let's have a chat.
I know just because of your buying that stuff, and you're seeing a lot of the new stuff before we ever see it. There's a lot of interesting, exciting stuff coming for next year.
There's going to be some very interesting plastics that are coming through, some really cool new ice jigs that are be coming through for this next year. Some by Clams, some by RBM Outdoors, some really cool patterns, some really cool looking plastics. And then, there's a whole bunch of other new stuff, but that's just kind of what stood out of the shows this year.
Jarrett, I want to thank you greatly for taking the time here.
Thanks again, John.
Well, folks, we need to take a break right now and hear from some of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll be talking to pro bass tournament angler Matt Stefan about bass fishing and a lot more. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hunters and anglers, Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop in the Hayward area. Stop in and check out the huge selection of fall muskie, bass, walleye, and panfish tackle. They also have a great selection of ammunition, scents, hunting supplies, and much more. Gear up for the fall at Hayward Bait and Bottle. And while you're there, check out the bottle shop for a full selection of beer, wine, and liquor, too. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop in the Hayward area. There's no time like the present to explore Hayward, Wisconsin, one of the Midwest's most popular vacation destinations. With crystal clear lakes for water sports and fishing, miles of trails for riding snowmobiles, ATVs, cross-country skiing, hiking, and mountain biking, This area is buzzing with activity year-round. Combined with charming local shops and a variety of Northwoods dining options, Hayward is certain to offer both adventure and relaxation for everyone. Plan your trip today and find everything you need on the Hayward Area Chamber of Commerce website. From events and attractions to local dining, shopping, and lodging, visit haywardareachamber.com and start your next adventure now.
The 2026 Polaris off-road vehicles are rolling in daily at Hayward Power Sports, and we need to create room by making crazy deals on the remaining 25s. Now is the time to take advantage during the Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance event. Claim rebates up to $4,000 or financing as low as 0.99% for 36 months on select models. Polaris RZR is built for everything from taming adventurous terrain to adrenaline-charged trail rides with your crew. Polaris Ranger is the perfect machine for tackling property maintenance and then take on a backcountry ride. Or get the best of both worlds with the Polaris General, built with task-to-trail versatility, unlocking more adventures. With up to $4,000 off select Polaris side-by-sides, it's time to finally get the machine of your dreams. Plus, Hayward Power Sports even has rebates up to $1,500 off the machine that started it all, the legendary tough Polaris Sportsman ATV. Let us help you get the right Polaris to join you on your next adventure. Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
Find them online at haywardpowersports.com. See dealer for complete program details. Always wear a helmet, never drink and ride.
Welcome back to another segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors, and this part of the show is brought to you by the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. For more information on lodging and vacationing here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out their website at haywardlakes.com. Well, folks, as we get into the late fall like this, some of the best fishing of the year is out there, especially for the big smallmouth bass on many of our waters. On this week's show, I had a chance to talk to pro bass tournament angler Matt Stefan about bass fishing here in northern Wisconsin and a lot more. Matt, good to have you on the show here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan, actually. I've having a house up in the Hayward area. I'm very familiar with what you guys are doing.
I was going to point that out, that you actually are a little closer to, you don't live here, but you got roots here because you got a cabin up here and you fish a lot up on some of the lakes up here.
Yeah, I definitely do. My ma actually was vacationing up there from the time she was 2 years old. And 70 years later, we ended up now having a cabin up there. And I've been, before the we've had the cabin for almost 30 years. But before that, my vacation every year was 2 weeks during the summer. We'd go up to the Hayward area. So I've seen it my entire life. So roughly 45 years, I've seen how it's progressed up there.
Well, you spend your time up here on vacation, but some people, that's what you do for a living. You're a pro angler, tournament angler, and you in the tackle business, everything else. And some people would think that's a vacation, but it's not.
No, it's man, to make a living out of fishing, as you guys know, I mean, it's a full-time job. And I'd actually say I work a lot harder at my fishing career than I did when I worked in the corporate world 15 years ago. And, it's one of those things. If you love it enough, you find a way to make the fishing work and provide for your family. But it's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, it's not a job; it's a lifestyle.
100% agree with that.
Yeah, how long you been fishing the tournaments? How did you get into it, and then all that stuff?
Yeah, so I've this was my 15th season fishing at the professional level, traveling the country and doing it. Prior to that, I went to school at the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point, and when I graduated there in 2002, I just started fishing a lot of local team events throughout Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Minnesota, and got to the point where I was doing well enough where I figured, you know what, I'm interested in fishing at the professional level, and maybe we should give it a try. And was able to at that point qualify to fish the FLW Tour, which is now part of the Bass Pro Tour. And 15 years later, here we are.
Well, we always think, or people always thought about bass fishing down south and, northern pike and walleye fishing up north. But as of the last few years, some of the hottest anglers and the best anglers out of there winning Bassmaster Classic and everything else are coming from the North Country.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is due to the fact that we have a lot of different species. So a lot of the anglers from Wisconsin and Minnesota and the upper Midwest, I feel like, are very well-rounded because we know how to target muskie and northern and walleye and all these different species. And we utilize what we learn from those species. We can apply them to bass, and then we're able to go around the country using that knowledge that we've gained to our advantage. And I think we're seeing that finally now. I think for a long time, I feel like the biggest hindrance for northern anglers to fish at the professional level was the amount of travel. And, I think it took a handful of really good anglers to go have success that kind of spurred a bunch of the rest of us to give it a try. And, what we found is we can definitely compete at the national level. It's just a matter of having to put a few more miles on our vehicles.
I think maybe, if I'm correct, one of the first northern anglers to really make waves in the bass world was KVD, Kevin Van Dam. I think he won the Classic 3 times, and he's from Michigan. Yeah, he's from Kalamazoo, Michigan. He kind of was the first northern angler to pave the way. I mean, there's a lot of northern anglers that weren't necessarily, doing all of the heavy big tournaments. But I mean, you can go all the way back to guys like Al Lindner, who did really well fishing at the professional level, and then just kind of transitioned more into the media side of things, doing TV and the magazine and all that. But KVD kind of paved the way. And, at this point, it would take me a while to count all the guys from Minnesota and Wisconsin. There's probably 10 or 12 of us that have been doing it for quite some time now.
Well, you mentioned Al Lindner, and most people think of Al when it comes to walleyes. They think Al, but I could be wrong. I know Al fairly well, and one of his favorite fish to go after is smallmouth bass.
Yeah, he's there. All those in fishermen guys and the Lindners are great anglers. And when it comes to smallmouth and largemouth, they definitely know what they're doing.
Well, talking about the difference in southern, I mentioned earlier that, bass fishing was always a big southern thing. And up here we were, focused on some panfish stuff, but a lot of walleye and, then muskie and northern and stuff. But, in reality, we have, we don't have the 10-pound bass, on largemouth that they do down south. But if you look at what goes on in some of the smaller club tournaments and outings and stuff, the weigh-ins are pretty comparable whether you're down south or up here as far as weight and stuff, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, most of the lakes we go to in the country, if you can hit 15 pounds for 5 fish limit, that's a really good day on the water. There's only a handful of lakes down south that can produce a lot of the tournament field having 15 pounds or more. But when you start looking at coming up to the northern lakes, 15 pounds a lot of times doesn't do you any good. There's a lot more lakes, in my opinion, that have just more quality 3 to 4 pound fish up north than there are down south. The difference, as you mentioned, you go down south, you have a shot at a 10 pounder. If you're in northern Wisconsin, you have a shot at a 6 pounder. But that's a pretty top level fish for both largemouth and smallmouth. But the overall quality throughout the north woods of Wisconsin is just amazing, and I feel very fortunate to be able to live close enough to take advantage of a lot of that fishing.
Well, especially smallmouth, and I think whether it's UP, Michigan, there's some even over towards St. Lawrence River, but the UP, Michigan, northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and even in the Dakotas, you find up into Canada, you're going to find some of the best smallmouth bass fishing for some of the biggest fish that you're going to find on the planet, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where I'd say you actually have a shot at a world record size fish. I mean, that's how incredible a lot of our fishing is. I've got one of my favorite things to do is chase big smallmouth in the fall, and I mean, there's a lot of lakes that I go to on a regular basis where catching a 25-pound bag of fish for my 5 biggest fish is actually a bad day of fishing. Like, I'm looking for 6+ pounders, and there's a lot of really good trophy smallmouth in that entire region you just mentioned. And it's just a matter of, putting your time in and finding out which lakes have that quality and that potential to kick out the true trophy class fish. But it's not 1 or 2 lakes. I mean, there's lakes all throughout that entire upper Midwest region you just mentioned.
Well, folks, we need to take yet another break and hear from even more of the fine sponsors that bring the show to you every week. When we come back, we'll have the second part of that talk we had with pro tournament bass angler Matt Stefan. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages.
Hey folks, come on over to Hayward Ace Hardware and check out the area's largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories. We carry top brands like Browning and Sig Sauer, and we have a great selection of the newest and hard-to-find models. We've got a large selection of ammo with more coming in daily. If you need a scope, we carry great brands like Leupold, Hawk, and EOTech, and we'll even mount it and bore-sight it for you too. We even sell suppressors and silencers. And don't forget to check out our Guns of the Week. Huge discounts on a variety of pistols, rifles, and shotguns that change every week. So stop on in to Hayward Ace Hardware, your firearms superstore. Hayward Ace Hardware, Highway 63 North in Hayward, or give us a call at 715-634-8700.
Hayward Animal Hospital is a full-service medical and surgical hospital featuring on-site laboratory, digital and dental x-ray, in-house pharmacy, and online store. Dr. Ostrander has 40 years of experience dealing with illnesses, injuries, surgery, and dentistry. Hayward Animal Hospital offers urgent care appointments and emergency surgery daily. Please call early in the day for these appointments. They open at 8 a.m. Hayward Animal Hospital is located 1 mile east of Hayward on Highway B. Call 715-634-8971.
Hey folks, the Log Cabin Store in Northwoods Beach on Highway K between the Big Lakes has groceries, ice, beer, liquor, and pop, and now has all new tackle and bait supplies. All current antiques and household items are now on sale, and all must go to make room for the sport shop. That's at the Log Cabin Store in Northwoods Beach between the Big Lakes.
If you'd like to have your time fishing be more enjoyable and productive, hiring a fishing guide can be a good investment. Whether it's learning more about fish patterns throughout the year, learning how to use your depth finder to find the best spots and fish, learn how to use that GPS to get the most out of it, or learn better boat control. A day on the water with a guide can really help you to be a better angler, as well as make a day on the lake very enjoyable. To book a guide trip this year or get more information, you can find us on the internet at www.wiscnorthlandoutdoors.com, and then just click on Area Guides.
Welcome back to the last segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. And folks, we're going to jump right back into the second part of that talk we had with pro bass tournament angler Matt Stefan.
I know we have lakes here in Hayward, and I do a lot of it in the fall too, like you do. And there's some of our lakes here that, you know, it's pretty common to go out there in the fall, and everybody in the boat gets at least one 20-inch smallmouth. I mean, it's their population of big fish is there, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's only getting better. I'm not personally sure if it's based on catch and release, and that's helping the populations, because I think for the most part now the majority of the bass fishing world is in favor of catch and release and practices catch and release. But I actually feel like there's something going on at a environmental level for the fish that's really got the smallmouth in just this overdrive gear where they seem like they're really doing well throughout the whole upper Midwest. And, if that continues, I really do think we're going to see the potential where we start seeing some 8 to 10 pound class fish popping up on a regular basis.
I think the survivability on catch and release on smallmouth is pretty darn good, actually. They tolerate temperature change, it seems like a little bit better than, there's been a lot of concern lately on muskies and, with the social media and excessive handling and stuff, losing a lot of the upper level fish. But I think some of your bass species are just a little bit more adept to being able to handle it, but you still should practice safe handling and be careful when you're handling fish to release them too.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I also think with smallmouth, we're seeing a pretty good trend towards smaller tackle, and if you're fishing with smaller tackle, things like Ned rigs and hair jigs and drop shots, you're talking about hooks that are a size 2, a size 1, much smaller hook where you're not doing nearly as much damage to the fish potentially. And I think that helps specifically with the smallmouth, but catch and release is definitely the most important thing because they really don't grow at a very fast rate. So when you're catching a 20-inch fish up in the Hayward area, I mean, that's an old fish, and he's probably been caught quite a few times over the course of his life. And, it's just a result of the catch and release working.
Now, let me ask you something here. What's your favorite go-to presentation and bait for smallmouth, especially in the summer and then going into the fall?
Yeah, so there's so many good baits out there, and it's really dependent on the lake. If I have my choice, I absolutely love to chase smallmouth with topwater baits, but on some lakes, that's not necessarily the ideal presentation. So if I can't throw the topwater bait and say they're down deeper, I really do like to throw Ned rig.
Yeah, Ned rig is a pretty catch-all. Actually, catches walleyes pretty good too, but it's a pretty good catch-all tool. And same thing. I love the smallmouth topwater bite when it's going, but that seems to be. It seems to be under the right conditions. Right away after the spring, after post spawn, and you start getting dragonflies and stuff hatching. You pretty got a good chance of getting out there and getting on a good topwater bite. But then once you get into summertime, it depends on the weather and a whole lot of conditions. I think too much.
Yeah, I agree completely with that, and I think a lot of times going with your finesse presentations are just a more reliable approach. Your drop shots, your Ned rigs. Just smaller, even hair jigs, things like that are generally going to be a better bet all around. I think a drop shot is a hard bait to beat as well. There's a little bit of me that's angry towards the drop shot every time I pick it up because I feel like the weight is always getting caught in the net or getting caught somewhere. So if I can avoid throwing a drop shot, I like to avoid throwing the drop shot.
I know quite a few pro anglers I've talked to. Actually, their number one bait would be a hair jig, but then I've also talked to some other ones that said, I can't stand the fish one. It's just too slow, too methodical to fish it.
Yeah, hair jig is a great bait that I think was really kept under the radar for quite some time. Over the last 5 to 10 years, it's become much more mainstream. I think it's an amazing bait for smallmouth, a really fun one to fish. It is, in my opinion, it excels in your cold water periods. So generally, if you're in that under that 60-degree mark, but you can definitely catch them year round on it. And but it is, like you said, a painstaking bait. I think for me, the biggest approach to a hair jig is trying to keep it as close to the bottom without touching the bottom. If you can keep it really close to the bottom, you're in the right strike zone, but it's not always an easy bait to throw. If you've got windy conditions or you're fishing, pretty deep, you're talking about trying to get a really light hair jig down to the fish. Meanwhile, you've got all the conditions working against you a lot of times. So it's not always the easiest bait to throw, but it does catch smallmouth for sure.
You think that some anglers out there, actually quite a few of them, maybe take those finesse presentations and actually fish them way too fast and too quickly?
I think there's times when the worst thing you can do is move your bait. Like I really do feel like a lot of times if your bait is in the strike zone, the fish know it's there, and they're generally either going to bite it right away because they're very actively feeding, or they're going to bite it right away because you dropped it in front of their face and they bit it out of reaction. But there's something to be said for just leaving your bait there, where if the fish didn't bite it on that initial drop, they will come back to it. And it's almost like they're annoyed by it being there, or they're just coming over to try to investigate what it is because it's something foreign to where they're living. And from that standpoint, I always like to look at it from the standpoint of if a fish was a human. If I don't know what something is, I go over, pick it up, and look at it. Well, a fish doesn't have hands, right? So they got to put it in their mouth to determine what it is. Is it edible or not? And unfortunately for them, if they pick up your bait at that point, they might go for a free boat ride.
Well, Matt, I want to thank you greatly for taking the time with us here, and get you back on here again, maybe from time to time. Maybe I get a chance to run into you out on the lake. We get out in the boat together or something at some time even. But I want to thank you here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on so much. It really is an honor. I've like I said, I've read so many different columns and pieces where they're always talking, they're using you as the guide that talks about the lake that they're on. So I'm very honored to be on the show, and being somebody that loves the Hayward area and the Northwoods, I would love to be back on. So if you ever need me, give me a call and we'll do it all over again.
Well, thank you greatly, Matt. Well, folks, we're about out of time for this week's show. I'd like to remind everyone out there that if you miss a show, go to our website at wnoradio.com. From there, you can link to our podcast site, and the show is also on Spotify and Google Podcasts every week.
And also, if you're looking for information on vacationing and lodging here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau website at haywardlakes.com. Thanks for listening, folks. We're out of time, and we'll be back again next week with another interesting show for you.
Listen with me, I'm gonna take you there to our Wisconsin outdoors, our Wisconsin outdoors.
This program has been produced and hosted entirely by Wisconsin Northland Outdoor Communications.